Hello and welcome to Hearts Matter, where once again I'm joined by Amed from Planetary Intelligence, and it's be a good conversation tonight. We're going to be talking about the Fool and the Sage. Looking forward to where it goes, the flow, and being able to share some hopefully great insights, not just for ourselves but also for the viewers as well. Welcome, Amed. It's great as ever to have you. Real honour. So thank you.
Always a pleasure, Kelvin. Another great topic to cover as well. Going beyond just conspiracies and talking about all the hidden agendas. It's important to also find the hidden agendas and what's going on in our own minds, in our psychology, because you got to remember these people are black magicians and sorcerers who have fooled humanity for a very long time. It's important that we know our own psychology, so we're not tricked by their mind tricks and their mind control, and also to undo the mind control that's already been done on us that we're still not yet aware of. Because the path to individuation is a very in-depth introspective path, and it's a lot more challenging for the extrovert amongst us out there. So this is why it's so important to talk about these things. So yeah, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, it's always great conversations, and looking forward to seeing where it all flows tonight. So thank you.
So the first thing we can address really is to go into the whole archetype and the idea behind archetype. So archetypes are images, are mental images of the collective unconscious that Carl Jung has termed, and it refers to the experiences of the whole entire human race and cultures combined. So that's why archetypes became something that Carl Jung termed. And amongst those archetypes is the fool and the sage, or in some terms he is the jester as well. We have the jester in the playing cards. Some of the traits that the jester archetype has, it's a bit akin to how the jester behaves in a court. When we watch the old Shakespearean plays, for example, I think in Macbeth there is the fool there. We have in the Tempest the fool character. I'm trying to remember the name of the character now, but it will come back to me. But just to go into the traits of it, usually the jester type archetype, or the fool, even in the tarot, for example, the character is very carefree. You can see in the posture of the fool. So you can see the fool here, very carefree. He's at the edge of the cliff, as you can see, and there's what appears to be waves. So he's at the precipice of land, and he's very carefree. He's carrying a very light pole with a bag, and on one hand he's got a flower. The wind is blowing. He's looking up as if there's no care. The dog there has come to greet him from civilization, so to speak. But also the danger of being the fool is that if you're not careful, you will fall into the sea and drown. So there are positive aspects to the fool and negative, but there are many sort of how do I say? There's many kind of positive and negatives to the fool, itself as a archetype. So the fool indicates new beginnings, innocence, freedom, originality, adventure, travel, obviously foolishness in itself. So also, to me, the fool is also the inner child, and there's a carelessness, there's a youthfulness and a spontaneity about the fool. There's also the kind of, I guess, there's lack of commitment as well. as you can see in that poise, right? Is you don't see the Fool as somebody being a committed type, let's just say. So it's taking the good amongst the, the positive amongst the negative traits, and understanding both sides of the coin of what the Fool can be. Again, in terms of like the jester, they tend to be the wild ones that tend to always enjoy and find the enjoyment in life. There's an innovativeness about them. They innovate and they think outside the box. They see things from very abstract kind of perspectives. They don't see things that the normie sees, right? There is something about the Fool there's this magic about the Fool. Although he's not the same as the magician archetype, but there's a playfulness. They break conventions. They also, the Fool doesn't respond well to authority, So again, it's about balance again, because you have your inner authority as an individuated being, human being. So but all the other negative traits, for example, also would be they have difficulty in expressing their true feelings, but at the same time they can diffuse very stressful and serious situations with humor. So there is a sort of playfulness and balance amongst them. So the Fool isn't always the Fool, the jester isn't always the jester. There's a wisdom to them as well. So it's about finding a balance with the archetype of the Fool, because we've seen, for example, the Fool is portrayed in Hollywood films. That archetype is obviously taken on by the Joker. It's a major archetype of the Fool or the jester. That would be the Joker. As you can see, the Joker, that has his very intelligent side and also deeply wounded side, and we can see the flip side of the Fool can become very violent. And I don't like the word because Hollywood always tries to attack anarchy when anarchy's got nothing to do with the Joker or the Fool. The negative side would be chaos. In fact, if you watch Batman Dark Knight by Christopher Nolan, you'll see that he's the Heath Ledger character. Heath Ledger's portrayal of the Joker is much more akin to the negative side of the Fool or the jester. So there is that sort of also psychopathy that comes with the negative side of the jester or the Fool as well. There is a psychopathic nature, and that is why the Fool always is drawn to the sage. And if we just move on to just kind of, now we've covered the jester and the Fool in terms of their characteristics, one can look at the sage archetype. And so the sage archetype is obviously wise, noble, has honor, integrity, there's a prudence about the sage as well. Very insightful, has a weighed, balanced judgment, and so they know how to navigate life's challenges. And most people tend to kind of want to talk to a sage kind of person. If you have that friend that you kind of go to who's got that sort of sage-like archetype in them, because we all embody different archetypes. Each one of us has a sort of a kind of dominant or predominant archetype within our personality trait, and that is also intrinsically linked to the inner zodiac. In terms of being a Sagittarius or a Pisces, you will embody a certain trait of that sign within that sign. Does that make sense? So you might have an archetype that Jung would term. So you might be a Piscean, but you could be a Sage. You might be an Aries, but you could be a Sage. You see, the archetype of the Sage has different faces as well within the zodiacal signs as well. They have a very scientific and rational, logical mind, but it's also balanced with this sort of madness to their methods and the way they achieve things. It's not very straightforward, so it has a very kind of crossover with the Fool archetype, because there is a madness to the Sage as well, which this is again, I can only speak from my sort of research and opinion, because other people have different opinions, and people who've studied archetypes, you know, having been an actor for many years, you know, you get to study archetypes, and not that all actors do, but you do get to study different characters and what they embody, and their motivations and their personality traits and what they're akin to. So they have a very philosophical nature. They also know how to delegate tasks to very naive followers. A humor to their methods as well, you know, to those who have enough wisdom to see, you know, what they do with certain people. They also know how to wear masks efficiently, because so the Sage is a very individuated individual, but the Sage can also like know how to act, know how to within certain given situations, whether it's difficult situations to get out of, that will because the Sage sees through most, I would say all people. They will see through all types of people, because they have this sort of innate wisdom and intuition about, and it's through their wisdom and knowledge that they are able to see through into their souls. And again, I always liken the Sage to the shaman. The shaman and the Sage are no different, are one and the same. You know, the shaman, again, the villagers will always go to the shaman to ask for advice. If there is disease in the village, they will go to the Sage, or sorry, the Sage who is the shaman, the medicine man. So there is a sort of, again, a crossover of the Sage into these other characters that are outside the Jungian archetypes, such as the shaman. So you know, they usually look at things also objectively, because we as human beings tend to look at things subjectively based on our own perceptions, judgments, knowledge, experiences. So we look at reality in a subjective way, whereas the Sages are able to look at the objective, meaning they become the total observer of things without judgment, without even being in tune to their own personality. They're able to just witness, you know, and look at things in an objective way, as opposed to a subjective way, which is, you know, the word subjective means to submit to the adjective, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So the Sage also has moral character, of noble traits and values. So I mean, the best way I can give to you is the Sage archetype. Think of Gandalf in Lord of the Rings. You know, he has a very he has a very sage type, a sage archetype about him, and they use these things in movies all the time. You know, the movie makers understand the psychology. That's why they know how to create these characters that embody certain archetypes that people can relate to. You know how some people will watch a film, but they'll like one character more than another, and you'll like a different character to the one, you know. And it's the same thing when you look at Marvel, the superhero archetypes. Each one embodies a certain archetype, you know. For example, so look at Spider-Man. Spider-Man's personality embodies the Fool. He's quite foolish, young, youthful, you know, looks at things into different perspectives. Again, you see him where you have the more grounded Sage type, which is Hulk. You know, Hulk is quite a Sage type character. He's the doctor. He's very reasoned. Obviously, he gets angry, but that turns into a different personality. But I'm just speaking in terms of some of the characters in these films and how we see them in films. Look at Morpheus in The Matrix. Look at Obi-Wan Kenobi in Star Wars. You know, so you have, and Yoda as well. So you have two actually sage archetypes within those films. So yeah, you can find these sort of characteristics of these archetypes in movies, and this is why we relate to them, because they're also part of the human psyche, the human collective unconscious. And
I mean, is it all tied into sort of like mythology as well?
yes,
I mean,
absolutely.
yeah,
I mean, mythology
yeah.
is if you think about mythology are mental images of our cultures. If you think about it, you know, so yeah, it's very valid actually. We go back to mythology, because even in mythology we have those archetypes. You know, I mean, God is the ultimate sage archetype, if you think about it. The all-knowing, all-seeing, you know. Again, it's these mental images that we've created through our understanding of what God is and what the devil is, for example. You know, the devil in itself is, you know, Satan or devil is an archetype on its own, but that's something for another subject matter for another time that we can go into.
Yeah,
But
sure.
yeah, definitely in mythology. So if you look at mythology, you know, Zeus tends to be the wise sage, you know, and so is Odin. You know, if you look at Odin is the sage in Norse mythology. And where else can you look? You can look at the Epic of Gilgamesh. Again, Gilgamesh is it's more to do with his story becoming the wise sage again through his adventures through the underworld. You know, it's again, it's a rite of passage to become a sage. And anybody, not anybody, but it's a hard path to embody that archetype, because it requires inner work and introspection. And that's how the sage is able to reach wisdom, is because they can assimilate all their life experiences objectively and be able to see their foolishness within it all, and also be able to look at every experience objectively from all angles, not just their own personal judged angle. They're able to look at it from other perspectives, and that's the power of the sage. You know, the turtle in mythos also is a symbol of the sage, of the wise one. The sage doesn't really have much of a negative trait in terms of they're in touch with nature. They usually like have an innate intuition to be able to foresee things before they happen. So, for example, even looking at day-to-day real life sages, for example. So I would liken Carl Jung to a sage. I would liken some of the Greek philosophers to sage types, Epictetus, these great philosophers. Again, philosophy is one of the traits of the sage. And when we look at the fools would be people, again, remember, the fool also has wisdom, and there is a method to their madness as well. But again, the positive traits, negative traits, because the other flip side of the fool, or should I say the jester, is the psychopathy, is the psychopath. So there's a psychopathic, sociopathic trait or pathological tendency of the fool. Because when you teeter on madness, you can totally flip on the other side, where you can become a cold-blooded reptile with no empathy. Not to say that you don't feel, because psychopaths do feel. They just don't feel for you. That's the difference. That is the difference between the psychopath and someone who's a healthy individual, or should I say the negative or evil side to the fool. So Yeah, and the thing is, they're intrinsically linked because and Michael Tsarion's gone into this in, I really recommend a podcast called the Psychopath and the Sage. He's done two episodes on this, and is what's inspired this talk really in a way for me. But it's kind of just like putting my own spin on it a bit as well, and just to kind of elaborate on my reflections on some of that work as well. And so
would that be sorry, just for would that be something that you'd be able to put in the description below?
yeah, I'll
For the
put a link
people?
to it. Yeah, I'll
Thank
send
you.
you a link to the
Right. Yeah, thank
yeah,
you.
I really recommend it. It will do a lot more than I would do in this podcast, I tell you.
Okay.
Michael is so prolific, and he really goes
Mm.
into much depth and puts a lot of references down. He knows his stuff when it comes to this realm, where Michael can go into a lot more deeper if the viewer here wants to kind of go into it and study it and make a study out of it. Michael has some great references in there and so on. The psychopathic nature of the jester or the fool. Again, this is my interpretation. Michael won't say this. This is just my personal opinion. Again, I just see the negatives and positives to each archetype and character. And my interpretation is the psychopath is the flip side of the fool, or the jester archetype. And like I said, they tend to, when the sage and that negative fool meet, there is always something profound that will happen. Either the sage ends up getting defeated, or the fool awakens to their own horrible nature. So either way it could happen. It could happen, go either way, depending on how strong the character and the will of the individual is at the time. But again, we see these in films. We see these two opposing characters in films. We'll see the one that is wise, the hero as well. The hero will also be, depending on the character, like Doctor Strange, for example. He embodies like around 3 archetypes. You'll have the fool, the sage, because he's a doctor, he's a surgeon, very intelligent, but he does some foolish things sometimes as well when he plays around with time and space and magic. So there is also the danger to his ignorance and his foolishness when he plays around with these things. So yeah, you have these kind of enmeshed, but the evil guy, the bad guy, 9 times out of 10 is the psychopath, or is that typical devil slash evil fool archetype. Evil fool would be the best way to call it, I think, on this occasion. So yeah, it's a given with these things. So when you study these, when you look at films, and you even read, whether you read fictional stories, keep that in mind. Keep that in mind when you're watching this, but also keep it in mind that you embody one of those archetypes predominantly, one or the other, or you have a mixture of a few. So you can also recognize those traits within your psyche. So you could say, well, yeah, I like to be philosophical. Well, if you like to be philosophical, that means you've got a sage-like trait there. Or I like to use humor and joke around, and turn serious situations into funny situations. Well, there you go. You've got the fool in you. You got the jester or the fool in you. So good. It's like recognizing your own traits and know thyself is ultimately the thing. It's like knowing these things.
Yeah.
And
So what you're saying is by studying, watching these films, or maybe out of books even, or whatever, that they can help you to understand those archetypes within ourselves.
yeah, because it's in the collective. You see, again, I'll put some references to Jungian archetypes. One can go in and just look at the Jungian archetypes and just see for themselves. you know, how many archetypes there are, and to study them, you know, because they are, especially if you're a creative writer, for example, you want to write a book, a fictional book. It's important that you understand these archetypes before you start writing books, fictional books in particular, you know, fantasy stories or whatever stories you want to create. It's important to have these archetypes in mind when writing your characters and developing your characters and your stories. But again, more importantly, it's to do with the self. So it's about understanding the different dimensions of you, which are many, you know. Self is there, you know, as a whole being, but also within that is contained the mental archetypes within the collective unconscious that Carl Jung talks about. So it's like, well, how much do you want to know about yourself, and which of those traits do you want to embody as well? You can take all these positive traits. It doesn't have to be just the fool and the sage. You know, there's a whole other list of archetypes that you could embody. You know, such as the magician. You've got the lover, the ruler, the rebel, right? You've got the creator, the caregiver, the everyman archetype, the hero archetype, the explorer archetype. You know, so there are quite a few archetypes out there, and again, I'll share some links with you so people can have a look at some of the interesting things into archetypes. But yeah, just kind of like, just to give people an idea of what the sage is about, and what the fool is about, and how they're quite closely interlinked in the way they there is a crossover. Let's just say there is always a crossover, just as there is a crossover in the zodiac signs, you know, because you'll have a predominant Aries, but it will have some Gemini qualities in them because their ascendant is in Gemini. You know, again, it's understanding and knowing thyself isn't just about thinking you're a one-dimensional 2D character. You know, so this is why these archetypes will add more depth into understanding and using the tools of the Jungian archetypes on top of your zodiac signs and the tarot and so on and so forth. So yeah, I just wanted to share that out there, really, for people to see, you know.
Yeah, great insight, and for me, that's give me more insight as well. You know, as to when I'm watching films as well and stuff like that. You know, so sometimes we don't see it like that. We just watch a film, you know. But you've given me more of an in-depth way of looking at films in future. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, my pleasure, my pleasure. You know, again, just kind of educating yourself about it, and that's the most important thing. And once you know, you kind of understand, you can see more through certain characters, but then you'll be able to see through more layers, because then you go through the sage archetype layer, but there might be beneath that layer the explorer or the fool underneath that, because the fool can develop into the sage, you know. So there's so many different ways of looking at these things objectively and going, okay, interesting, these are characteristics. Oh yeah, it's in the collective unconscious. Well, it makes sense because it's in my unconscious. And how much do I want to bring out those traits? Do they suit who I am? Do I want all these traits? I'm not really, because some people are not really philosophical. Some people are very artistic and carefree, which embodies the fool archetype more, you know. So it's just knowing about these traits and being able to see those traits within you, you know, and
Yeah,
you know, it's just
I think I can see a few of me, a few different ones.
Yeah,
but it's good. It's good.
yeah. And again, it's using these tools of, like Logan Jason, for example. He always talks about decoding your reality and decoding who you are. Well, yeah, it's important, and this is why this channel is mostly heavily focused on the inner psychology and inner work, because we find that this is the only way to empower the individual in the times we're living in, because the more you know yourself, the more armed you are against the authorities, right, of the cabal that are out there, you know, that want to usurp you and usurp your soul and your selfhood. And you know, and they will use every type of trick in the book, including every type of threat, from courts to judges, you know, from courts and judges to you know, police, to threatening letters, you know, and everything. You got the bully type out there as well. I mean, you're dealing with people day to day who are part of the collective zombified herd, who would come up to you, who are only doing their job, and you know, tell you off because you're not following the rules, you know. And it's like, well, if you're a moral individual, you understand morality better for yourself, through yourself, having studied these things, you'll be able to know you're doing nothing wrong. So you're not caught by their language and their authoritative sort of behavior over you to start becoming fearful, because that's where they want to keep us. So it's about bringing this knowledge, empowering you, and going, no, just no, I'm not being phased by it. And then you're able to deal with these, should I say, this collective herd with your own authority, and they'll be looking like, wow, then they'll start doubting themselves, because really the fear is in them, you know. And that's why knowledge is power, and knowledge gives you power once you put it into action, and empower yourself with it.
Yeah. And it all comes down to, doesn't it, this the shadow collective, you know, because you know, I only have to go back and think, wow, you know, you just don't realize until you start awakening. You know, I don't like the word awakening, but you know, because it's, you know, my journey is a continuous journey, you know, it will go just on and on and on. But realizations and stuff, and you think, wow, you know, because there's so much within that collectiveness, you know, unconscious, that until you start to come and it starts to unravel and you start to see and think, man, you know, all the this and that, and just all this stuff that needs shedding. You know, it's a lot of deep programming that goes on.
Oh, 100%. I mean,
For sure.
again, it's like the biggest foolish thing, the negative side of the fool, is to be not even aware of your own addictions, your own you know, your own oppression. Because when we talk about repressing and suppressing, Michael states this as well. You know, this is really kind of paraphrasing Michael Tsarion here, but it's more kind of him saying, well, it's suppression and repression are just another word for oppression. You're just doing it to yourself. You're oppressing yourself. So think about that for a moment, and see what you're doing. Have a very honest conversation with yourself, and go, well, how much am I suppressing and oppressing in myself? Because that is oppression. I'm ultimately oppressing myself, and I don't need Big Brother to do it for me. I'm already doing it to myself. So, and that's the thing. Again, once you understand that this is a sort of, you know, that reality isn't, it's a set, that the brain is programmable, just like a computer. This avatar is programmable. You can program it to do anything you want. You know, I can install, if I want to install a martial arts program, you know, I'll learn martial arts. I'll go and take classes, do the goals, get my belts. But martial arts really isn't about that, because the art form defies program itself. But I'm just saying, if you want to be a doctor program, or a dentist program, or a police program, those are all programs, and people are given these things because they associate their personality with their uniform and what they do for work, and what's been given to them by the cabal, right? Well, you're not an individual. I'm sorry, but if you're not really individuated, that doesn't make you, because you're behaving like a doctor should. Well, you're just like a character in a video game. It's like there's nothing original about you. There's nothing that breaks the mold or breaks the pattern of personalities that you meet out there. You know, like you see, everyone's a copy of someone else, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, you're reminding me of because obviously of my journey I've shared in the past. You know, I think one of the first people that I remember sort of, I think watching was David Icke. You know,
yeah,
and one of the things he said was about labels. You know, people love labels. You know, this is exactly these labels and labels that people put. I get that. Yeah, the whole, this is who I am, and this is, my label. And yeah, I was down the Indian the other day, and ordering a couple of bits and that, and he sort of asked me what my work was, and I sort of said, well, it's music, and do a bit of DJing and stuff like that. But inside of me, I was thinking, I know that I'm more than that, but it's like how people relate to that side of things,
and it's also to do
And I
with the
know that
way
I'm
the
way,
question,
I'm way, way more than that,
yeah, and the way the question is
Mm,
poised as well, because
mm,
you will
mm, mm,
go,
mm.
oh, would you, it's not what you are.
Mm.
What kind of skills do you have? That's really
Yeah,
the question to ask, you know.
yeah, yeah.
What are your skills? Oh, amongst them, yeah, I'll do
Mm,
a bit of
mm,
DJing. But by it's like, oh, what do you do? You know, well, you do many things. I mean, yeah, like you said, it's got many different dimensions. So
exactly. It
yeah,
goes
how
way,
can
way,
you?
way beyond all of that stuff. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's funny, isn't it? How everything seems to be to do with what who you are and how you fit into the world, sort of thing. Whether, like you said, a doctor, policeman, or your job, or little F or something at a kiosk or something. It's just, yeah, it's just
yeah.
crazy.
And also, look, I mean, this is the thing at the time when geniuses come, or
Mm,
these unique individual characters come out. At first, they are ridiculed and reviled. You know, they're not liked because their behavior is not part of the collective. You know, you express yourself truly in front of the collective, 10 times out of 10. I would like to say 9, but
mhm,
10 times out of 10, you will be
mm,
looked at weirdly. There's something strange about your behavior.
mm,
There's
mm,
something wrong with you
mm,
because you
mm,
expressed yourself in a very unique way that nobody else has expressed in that way
mm,
before.
mm.
So when you do it, people look at you like you're crazy, when actually they're the ones that are crazy, because
Yeah.
in fact they're waiting for you to become this very suppressed and self-oppressed individual for them to accept you. Oh yeah, we'll accept you when you oppress yourself. Yeah, we'll let you into our club. You're welcome now. Just trample on yourself, on your true individuality.
Yeah.
Trample on your inner child. Trample on all your
Mm,
potential. Because
mm,
once you do, we will accept you. That you're part of our cult or our culture, right?
mm,
So
mm,
yeah,
mm,
then we'll let you in. Then I can accept you as my equal.
mm,
But how dare you express yourself in a very unique way? Weirdo, weirdo, you
mm.
know?
Yeah.
Oh, get away from
Mm,
him, you know?
mm,
He's completely lost it.
yeah. Yeah. But it's totally, what you're saying totally makes sense. As we talked about before we started the podcast earlier, I said about, I feel like I'm sort of gradually gaining my sanity and seeing all the insanity around me. Yeah, but it's just the way things are, as you know, as we're discussing about, about working on ourselves,
Mm,
and stuff. And that, you start to then see all these things, it's just, yeah,
yeah.
it's, yeah, yeah, you sort of level upon deeper level upon deeper level, But would I change it? No.
Yeah, I mean,
I love being Kelvin, being me, and
yeah. And again, you're not your name either. I mean, that's just a
no,
label.
that's just that's just a
So
label. Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's about,
Um,
again, it's about
yeah.
getting in tune with who you are, not
Mm,
in just an intellectual sense, but in a
mm,
feeling kind of sense as well. It's actually
yeah.
combining the two. It's a
It's
combination of the two, you
yeah.
know.
It's great that you're bringing that up because I know that's something within me. Which is that for many years, and all my life journey, um, it's very hard. The heart gets blocked,
Yep.
it does. I've seen it myself, but my inside cries for that feeling, that side that needs to come in and break that barrier, if that makes sense,
Yep.
because just over years and years and years, the heart seems to get, it seems like that this barrier goes up and stuff. So yeah,
Well,
yeah, I
it's
get that, and
largely to do,
I desire. That's what I
yeah.
desire.
Well, it's also largely to do with
Mm,
our parents. They do all the
mm,
cabal's work without them knowing. I'm not saying they said anything of their fault,
mm,
but
mm,
because they're
mm,
just unconscious beings, they're not conscious of what they're, because they're doing what everybody else is doing. Have a family and kids and pursuit of happiness, right? Everyone thinks that's how it should be, which is correct. You got the idea. The you know purpose of life is to is to live it, but to live it responsibly is another thing. To live it with true love and true art. Because I think I'm with Otto Rank on this one. Like, and this is why I love the Fool and the Sage archetypes, because there is an artistic way in which they live. And with art, there's only one art, which is you. You have a unique way of drawing, but
mm,
finding that inner creativity in yourself, especially as a man, the inner anima is important to integrate. Women are already creative. They're born with that
mm.
innate creativity in
Yeah.
themselves. What they have is too much of it, and they need
Mm,
to order their lives. So that's why they need the masculine integrated within themselves, so that the chaos in them and inside them has some sort of order. you know and
mm.
again, it's balancing the masculine and feminine within each of us.
Within.
And
Mm, mm,
that's why it's so important for men to be attuned to their inner feminine, which is the artistic self. I think part of what art is, and the most refined art, or the most beautiful art, is the type of art that's got the masculine and the feminine balanced. And I know we're going a bit off topic here from the Sage and the Fool, but they're actually, no, that is not off topic, because the Sage will realize this.
mm,
In their path, the Sage will realize that this is true wisdom, where the masculine and feminine have to be in balance. And that balance of duality is really important, because if you let the chaos take over, you become too flimsy and disorderly and chaotic. But if you
mm.
let the masculine take over, you become too rigid and dogmatic and dictatorial and oppressive. So it's knowing and seeing for what it is. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. It's again, isn't it? It's about the balance. Yeah. Because it's like a pendulum swinging, isn't it? And it's finding the balance in the middle, because we
Yep.
can go from one extreme to the other.
Yeah.
So it makes complete sense.
Yeah. And also, it's also to do with how you react to things, because you can be in the negative side of the Fool, and you could react to the agenda that's being played out at the moment, and that reaction will 9 times out of 10 be fear, a fear reaction, or a trauma trigger response, which they know how to push. By the way, they know every little button to push as part of your psyche. So watch out if you are reacting to their narrative, and you're look, I understand the need to spread the truth. I get that. I totally get that. The most important thing is to educate our children, because that's where it's at. You know, for a lot of adults, it's a bit too late. If they haven't woken up and smelt it yet, I mean, it's so in your face now. And if they haven't been able to see it during the lockdown and during the whole drama that ensued after 2020, like seriously, if that hasn't woken him up, what will? You know, 9/11 was a bit harder. I get it. That was a bit harder to get your head around. But seriously, 2020, you haven't seen the science? I mean, come on. Ridiculous. You know?
Yeah.
And this is the power of how they know our imagination and the power of the imagination over the will. Because remember, the intuition, the empathy, and the imagination are the three most important powers we have as, you know, as human beings. So if we're not utilizing all those three in our lives in a daily basis, then they'll take advantage of it. So they use the imagination by creating this paradigm, so-called, you know what we're talking about, the thing that makes you go achoo, right? It makes you sneeze, right? Made it bigger, made you think it's going to kill you, and made you believe in it because it's invisible. It wasn't proven. It wasn't isolated. There was no such thing. The whole germ theory is a whole joke anyway. So again, it goes to show the power of how your imagination can be used against you. If you don't have that wisdom. Yep. So,
yeah, I mean, I'm like you, you know, I've always said, sort of, really, I mean, you know, yeah, I mean, I think at the beginning I was, you know, I've got to be honest, I was slightly tricked at the beginning of it all, a little bit, you know, but then, you know, again, I was still on my journey, and stuff and all that, but now, you know, I see it, and I'm like, I know where I'm at with it, and all that, and then, you know, to add on to it, they then a little planned out what with the needle craft as well, so we know that. Yeah, we know the situation and stuff and all that. Like you said, you know, it's just like this, The Walking Dead around us. With, unfortunately, with some people.
But I'm just more kind of saying, to those, if you really want to spread the truth and want to wake and speak it out, I get it. I if that's your thing, go ahead, go on your crusade. But at the same time, if you really want to make a change, go and teach the children. That is a way more effective, you know, and by educating your children, that is because they're the future. If you're starting to plant those seeds now and sow those seeds, who are our children? Because, you know, in a few years, this body, this avatar is gone, you know, who will be left? It would be our children to take on, who will then be the adults, you know, and the men and the women of the world. So if we start now with the children, we've got a much better chance than trying to go on a crusade and wake up all the adults, because
I totally
for a
get
lot
that.
of them,
I totally get it. Yeah,
it's too late. It's too late.
I totally get that, because and that's the very thing as well. You know, we know that that's where their aiming this is, at the children. You know, we you know, that's where they're trying to. We know what's going on there.
Traumatize the adults, traumatize the children.
Clear as day. Yeah,
totally.
What you're saying makes absolute complete sense. Complete sense. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So again, it's more kind of having the wisdom of looking at things, because where your attention goes, your energy flows. Where you're putting your attention is where your energy is going. You know, is your attention on the drama and the narrative and the news and the media? Well, and you're reacting off that, and it's like, look, I totally get it, because you're in the system, you're living in a city, you know, we all born into different, you know, class brackets. Some of us are not as financially better off. I'm not saying I am either, like of no accord to my own, you know, my parents came to London and this is where I've ended up. And you know, I didn't recognize until 2 or 3 years ago how important nature was, and how much I needed it. So again, I'm going to create that informed field to create that reality now and start sowing those seeds. So eventually I will be out where I need to be, and away from these, from these city control structures. But again, sadly, in the real world, the real world, I guess it's not real, it's only real as it can get. But it relies on money. If you want, you need money to live, to have for this avatar to be housed. It needs to live, for it to be clothed, for it to be fed. It needs those basic things. And without, sadly, money is the most important thing right now to solve that solution. There might be creative means, but again, it's the method of energy and exchange we have, and that's all we have until something else can replace it. Yeah. This is what we've got, so we've got to work with what we've got, but understand that money is just an exchange of energy. It's that's why a lot of people in this movement tend to have a lot of shame around it, about earning money off people and stuff. It's like, no, there's no shame in it at all. You should be earning you could be earning whatever you earn, as long as you're giving something of value to people that's going to help them improve their lives. Doctors think about doctors, how much they get paid, and they're giving you poison. They're giving you, GPs and so on, they're giving you pure poison in a pill, killing and destroying your health. So don't tell me right from wrong, and feel shame about earning something because you're doing something of value for society. But again, when you're able to start to become more creative with what you do, and the internet is a great tool to use, so use it. In the physical world as well, like, manifest what you want, have a vision, get back to the imagination and use it for yourself. Don't let those evil bastards basically take it from us. I don't like to swear a lot, but these people are the worst of the worst.
I totally, and this is it. Once you begin to realize, like, I was in conversation with Joss, actually, a very good friend of mine, and it just came out. It's just once you start being true to yourself, then everything else will flow out of that. And that just came. I was like, whoa. It's just like, it just came out. But I was like, yeah, but I get it, because that's it. Once you can start being true to yourself and living that true, who you are, then it will flow out of that.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like, I feel like I have a sense of purpose in my life. And some people haven't got that.
Yeah.
Yes,
Also, they don't want the male to be masculine as well, because the whole point is, I don't stay silent. That's why I do podcasts. That's why I have a voice out there. But I focus more on the inner work, because I understand that it's the most important thing right now for people out there who've recently come across the truth, or start to see the agenda for what it is, that they have some guidance and not waste their time down rabbit holes, because you can go down all the rabbit holes you want to prove it, that it actually exists. Because why do you go down rabbit holes? You want to believe, you want to see if this is really truly happening. But people tend to kind of go down so many different rabbit holes where you don't need to waste your time. See it for what it is. See that there is, obviously do the research that you need to do to see it for what it is. But a lot of greats have already done that research for you. It doesn't take a lot of digging to see for what it is, and once you've kind of connected all the dots, you'll be able to see that it's clear as day that it exists. So,
and that's I mean, I hear what you're saying, because it's almost like it's getting just stuck on one sort of layer, when there's like so much that goes deeper than that. I totally get that, but I also know that I was there as well at one point as well. So
was I. But, we were all there. We were all asleep once upon a time, watching EastEnders or Baywatch or whatever, back in the day, for those a bit older. But I mean, it's it's being able to see that, you know, the inner work is the most important bit, because you become that example for others in your personality, in the way you're creating your personality in yourself, the way you're discovering who you are through your process of individuation. And when you do, well, when you come across the confrontations, you're able to do you're able to deal with those people with a bit more honor, dignity, love, and firmness. And for the men out there, with masculinity, you know, to be of steel and velvet. You've got to balance the steel and velvet. The steel is the masculine, the velvet is the feminine. That's what it means to be a man. So it's balancing the two and knowing that you're able to take on the confrontations and the challenges that come your way, because, you know, like we were talking about earlier, this world ain't just rainbow and roses and unicorns, you know. And I totally don't live under a rock to just see that. But at the same time, you know, you've got to live your life and live it the best way you can, and accumulate as much experience and wisdom as you can in this life, so that you live a fulfilling life, so that when you're on your deathbed, you don't look back and say, I haven't really lived my life. And this is for you listeners out there. It's for me and Kelvin also, to remind ourselves of the importance of living a fully realized life. And, you know, really, like, and it's hard, especially during these times, you know.
And what a blessing that is. What a blessing. You know, when you know, as you're saying that, it's just like, wow, what a blessing, you know. Because like you said, you know, I can either just waste it or actually do something amazing with it. You know, that is it really, isn't it?
Yeah. What do we do in our lives day to day? You know, and a lot of us, you know, I'm sure people are still, you know, who are awake, or again, I don't like to use the word, but who are conscious, right? Still stuck in their jobs, because the thing they've got us mostly by is our ability to earn a living and to live, you know, because that is the most difficult thing. But again, it's like, remember, there is nothing to fear. There is nothing to fear. So what are you fearing? It's okay to have a job. Figure it out. If you want change, it's in your hands. If you don't want change, that's fine. Keep working as what you need to work. There's no wrong in what you're doing, as long as you're not causing harm to others. You know, like, you know, for example, I don't want to work in a supermarket, because the supermarket sells poisons to people, poisonous food. So for me, that's a moral choice. For some people, they don't have a choice, you know, so they're going to have, but then you can figure out, well, why don't I go and get a skill and get myself out of it? Let me break pattern. And that is what Jason Brashears talks about, breaking pattern in his Awaken the Mortal Within. Break the pattern. You know, you want change, you've got to break the pattern in the way you live every day, the way you wake up. If you're waking up just to watch stuff just to go to a job and then come back and watch Netflix, then nothing will change. But if you go to your job and come back and work on your craft and your skill to get yourself, it takes discipline. So again, it's not rainbows, unicorns, and roses,
plenty of
daisies.
distractions. Plenty of distractions that can be out there at times. I mean, this is it. I mean, there's certain things, and I mean, I totally get where you're coming from, because you know, there times but I get easily distracted by certain things, you know, but I have certain intentions, you know, but I'm learning to put things into order more so, you know. Right, I need to do this, then I'll do this, you know, and that helps me personally, you know, rather than it all consuming you all at once. You know, if you break things down into little chunks of whatever it is that you want to do, that makes it more manageable, and you're not overwhelmed, you know, especially being quite creative and wanting to do things, you know. So I that's like what I help. It helps me. That helps me, you know, to break it down into smaller chunks, because there can be times when my mind can race and go ahead of itself sometimes. So
Exactly. I mean, again, it's to do with the way we use technology. Our
mm,
attention spans have become a lot shorter. And I've noticed when I was a kid and this wasn't around, right? When this wasn't around,
mm,
I was able to focus a lot more on my creativity. I was able to sit down for longer periods of time and focus. I was able to read for longer, you know. So it does take a bit of self-discipline. You know, technology is so easy now. It's made things so easy. So it's easy to sit down and watch stuff and distract yourself. The internet is full of it, you know. But to really truly sit down, disconnect from the screen, you know, read a book, or sit down and write some poetry, or do some painting, or do something creative, or work on something that you're really passionate about, because you know your vocation should be what you should be earning. What you enjoy in terms of work shouldn't feel like work,
no.
and that's how you should be earning your money.
Mm,
But again, to reach that, you need to take self-discipline. You need to discipline yourself to work on that. Whether you're creating a product, you're inventing a product, or creating artwork that's beautiful, that's unique, you need to put in the time, and that's the way it works. And what you do is you hold it in your imagination with faith, and that's where faith comes in. You have faith in your imagination, in the creator source essence that is you, to create that which is that you want to make money out of. And again, the sage will see this, you know, not to say I'm a sage, don't look to me as a sage. I'm just saying you have to find that inner sage in you,
yeah.
because that is where the wisdom comes from.
Yeah,
You
because
know,
I mean, yeah, there's a quote in that book actually. It's quite funny. He says that I'm going to put underneath in the chat. Actually, he says I'm more of a fool than I am a sage. You know,
yeah,
sort of thing.
yeah,
And that's great. You know, because that's a great thing to say, really. So I just wanted to
yeah.
say that.
Well, the sage knows that
Mm,
he or she is a fool,
mm,
right?
mm,
They know there is a foolish side to them. So again, the sage is not all knowing, and you can't be, not in a physical world, not in this physical uh projection, right, that we're living in, this quantum hologram. We cannot, because we have come into the world of limits, you know, even though that our spirit is immortal, our soul is immortal, and our spirit is timeless and it goes beyond space and time. Our bodies aren't. We've come here to experience mortality and finality, you know, because it's part of the experiment. It's part of this whole thing. So it's important to make use of the time you have. And again, you know, there's black screens, man. They really can suck you in, you know, they really can. It's
mm.
very dangerous tools.
Yeah,
And
the
you got
old,
to learn how to use them,
yeah,
you know.
the old scrying mirrors, I call them. You know,
Yep.
whether it's a laptop, the phone. Like I said, you know, that situation. I remember going back. You know, few, maybe about well, yeah, about a couple of years ago with my mum. You know, she had to go in. She had to go for a heart operation, and I just remember, you know, getting onto the station at Littlehampton. Just everyone was like that. You know, everywhere I looked, and I got on the train, and everyone was like, and there was like no communication between anybody. It was just like, you know, it's clearly just staring you in the face. You know,
Yeah.
there you go.
Welcome to the zombie nation, folks.
Yeah.
Just the
Tell
way
me
it
about it.
is, you know.
Hmm.
People
Hmm.
don't talk to each other anymore. They're too
Mm,
scared. They're too
mm,
scared,
mm,
because what we have done ultimately is we've lost trust with ourselves. So in turn, we've lost trust with others.
mm,
And this is a symptom of the inner world
mm,
of the collective, you know. And this is why it's so important for those of us who are becoming conscious of what's going on, you
mm,
know, is to do that inner work, because that's the most important spiritual work that we have to do, you know. And that it is spiritual. It is a truly spiritual work, you know, to work on yourself, to be honest with yourself, to look at the bad traits that you have, to see where you're oppressing yourself day to day, you know, that's hard work.
Yeah.
It takes courage. It takes a hero to do that kind of work.
Yeah.
You
For
know,
sure. For
so
sure. Yeah.
it's down to you to really look at yourself in the mirror and say, who am I?
Mm,
You know, who am I?
mm,
Who do I want to be? You know, and that choice is there for you every day you wake up. Every day you wake up, that choice is there.
mm,
So, you know, do right by you. Nobody else is going to do it for you. And
mm,
you know, your relationships and your life is going to manifest as a result of who you are. You know, not just what you do, is who you are. Who you are is what you do.
mm.
So it's important that you know who you are. So you know what you're doing. So you're conscious. So you're going to be unconscious or conscious. You got to make the unconscious conscious. That's the point of this whole process.
Yeah.
So, yep.
Yeah, I totally get that, you know, because I've said that to myself, you know, about sort of like, I'm sort of, yeah, lying to yourself, you know. You know, it's just like, you know, I want to stop being honest with myself and stop lying to myself, you know. That was one of the things I remember saying to myself, you know. Mm,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's self-awareness.
Mm,
That's the hardest one for
mm,
me. It's like in my daily interactions with people, friends, wherever I'm out, is to be, because you see, we live in a sort of dream state, you know, a sort of hypnotic state, and most of the time we're not really conscious of what we're even talking about. We're talking on autopilot sometimes,
yeah.
you know. Well, most people are, but when you're conscious, you kind of like, well, do I want to talk about this?
Mm-hmm,
You know,
mm-hmm,
you don't want to be rude, but at the same time, it's like,
mm,
no, no. I
mm,
want to do
mm,
something unusual and just break pattern, you know, and truly express myself and be like, you know what? I want to be honest with you. Don't mean to be rude. This is really boring. I don't really
mm,
want to talk about this.
mm.
So unless you've got something, I need to go. My time is a bit precious right now.
Yeah,
With respect,
yeah, I get
you
that.
know.
Yeah, I do get that. It's like I feel like I'm done with sort of small talk, you know.
Yeah.
That's just me, you know. But, you know, don't get me wrong. Obviously, you know, sometimes it has to be there, but yeah, I know that I want more than that, you know. Like you
Well,
were
you
saying, you
can
know,
be in charge
every
of the
day,
talk.
yeah, and every morning, you know, I get up, you know, I can choose to look out of my window and greet the day, hello day, you know, hello beautiful lights coming through, you know, all these things that Michael Tsarion's talked about, you know, and nature, you know,
Mm.
no, man, you know, it's just, and I know how important it is, you know, to get out there and stuff, and you know, you know, it's as Michael Tsarion says, it's the true religion before other religions. You know, it was nature was.
Yeah,
You know,
nature. Absolutely.
for sure.
You know,
Yeah, yeah.
that's how you find
Hmm.
the past the dogmas, the priesthoods,
Hmm.
the man-made churches, all those things.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
cathedrals of the forest will speak to you a lot more than the
Hmm.
cathedrals of man.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's your choice,
Hmm.
you know,
Hmm.
whether you want to see that as a truth or not, because for me that is a truth. And
Hmm.
there is nothing more beautiful than nature, because it takes away the way nature's formed. There is no judgment. You can't really give it anything. It's very abstract. When we look at man-made structures, you look at angles and stuff and symmetry. Um, but also we have to appreciate what we create, you know, as human beings, you know. So at the same time, you know, beauty is part of that. To create
Hmm.
beauty from nature is also a part of it. But yeah,
Yeah.
nothing is more pure than nature itself. And the thing
Hmm.
is, nature has a way of also being chaotic.
Hmm.
Remember, it's the feminine, so you have to also remember there does need to be a structure to it, you know. So
Hmm.
but yeah, it's
Yeah.
beautiful to have these rituals where you're greeting the day, you take a time out to go and walk in nature,
Hmm.
you know, or move in nature, dance in nature, play music in nature. you know. So those things are beautiful.
Yeah, just the simple little things, isn't it?
Yeah.
Simple little things. Just like the other day, again, out in the garden, the birds tweeting, and I remember having one time, and it almost felt like this bird came along and specifically it felt like, to me, it was specifically communicating with me. That I honestly felt that, just little things like that, and the washing line, and just seeing the drops of the washing line, and just these little things, simple things, that yeah, some people just wouldn't even, just wouldn't even go there, sort of thing. It's almost like you start to see these things that we've been so disconnected from, you know.
Mm.
So yeah, I totally get and understand, Yeah, it's nature. It's just and again, connections to the trees. I'm feeling that's a very important thing now and stuff, and giving, like we've discussed, and asked you about, and I remember, about your, if you've got a certain, what's the word I'm looking for, you want to see something make happen, you can give that to the tree,
Mm.
and and the tree then obviously communicates back as well.
Yeah.
It's a whole two-way thing, isn't it?
And even negative energy, if you're
Mm.
carrying
Mm.
negative as in
Mm.
like pain or whatever, you can go and cry to a tree.
Mm.
It will take all that
Mm.
energy. You know, there is a power in trees that
I'll,
is
I'll remember
beyond.
that.
Yeah,
I'll remember that. Thank you.
for
Thank you.
sure.
Thank you.
Like,
Yeah, I'll remember
don't
to
it's
take
not
that.
just about what you wish or
Mm.
what you want to
Mm.
manifest in your life, but it's
Mm.
also,
Mm.
if there's pain, it's the best
Yeah.
therapist. Trees are
Wow. Okay.
a great company.
Well, thank
Um,
you. Thank you. Mm.
and the trees take on so much for us. They're there for a reason. I mean, if anything, trees are shaped like our spines and our brains. If we pay attention to nature itself and its patterns, our spine and our brain are the most important bits of ourselves to operate in this physical reality. So if you see those similar patterns, you'll see that trees are no different than us. We're like trees. In fact, if trees all died in the world today, we can't breathe. We won't be able to live. Our bodies won't be able to exist. So we're innately linked, and this goes to show how important nature is and our connection to nature. So yeah, definitely trees are the most powerful things to connect with. The Druids knew this.
Yes.
The Druids knew
Yes.
this. The ancient shamans knew this. The most efficient, most powerful medicines come from trees. The most beautiful fruits, they come from trees and vines as well, but trees predominantly. So, yeah.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Because that's something more, that you've given me, personally me. So I shall definitely the next time I'm near a tree, and whatever's going on there, I shall give that to that tree. So
If you need a friend, just go to a tree. And you can
that's it.
even develop a relationship with a tree. If you
Yeah,
go to the same
absolutely.
tree
Mm.
in a
Mm.
forest in your favorite spot, and you
Yeah.
see a tree that's just there's something special about that. You can develop your
Mm.
relationship with that tree, because that tree is connected to the mycelium of this hologram, this
Yeah.
quantum reality. So you're
Mm.
able to affect through that tree very powerfully, acts as a magnifier. So it takes away negative energy or pain or suffering, but it also gives you positive energy back. You can also speak to it through thoughts. You don't even need to speak out loud. You can just put your hand to it, and just make a connection with it through your heart and through your intention, and put out that intention through the tree. And from there, have faith that, through the actions that the whatever you want manifest will manifest in your life. But obviously it can't be done without actions. So
Mm.
you have to
Mhm.
meet it halfway.
I'm near halfway, of course.
Your
Yeah,
imagination
absolutely.
and your superpowers won't work without the action. We live in a physical
Yeah.
quantum field,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
we have to
Well,
animate
this is it.
ourselves
Yeah, well,
towards
that's
what we
it.
want.
it's like no point, like as soon as they're going there saying, and then just sitting on your ass, basically.
Yeah, waiting for it to turn up like Santa Claus,
Yeah.
right? Dropping
Oh,
prezzies down
no,
the
I'll just
chimney.
wait now. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Makes perfect
exactly.
sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure, for sure. Mm. Yeah, and again, isn't it? Jason Preshears talks about the reality tunnels. Is it something tunnels?
Yeah,
Can't,
the tunnel,
can't think of the word.
well, you're creating an informed field,
It's sort of a,
a reality
yeah,
tunnel, a reality tunnel, or
reality
a
tunnel.
positive
That's it.
feedback
That
loop,
was it. That was it.
a
Yeah,
positive
yeah, yeah,
feedback
yeah,
loop.
yeah.
Yeah, because the default programming is already in us,
That's
and
it. That's
I
it.
mean, we don't need Jason. I
Mm,
mean, Jason has kind of, said about it as well, but so has
mm,
Michael. There's nothing
mm.
new under the sun.
No,
The negative default programming is there,
is that?
and that
Yeah.
is
Mm,
saying to you, you're nothing, you're not worth anything.
mm,
So do your job, be part of the system. You'll
yeah.
never amount to be able to anything. So
Mm,
it's that story we tell us, and that is part of the oppression, you see.
mm,
And this is
mm,
where the sage comes in again, tying
mm,
in the sage and the
mm.
fool, the
Yeah.
negative aspects of the fool. Because when you oppress yourself and you oppress your artistic expression, because we're all artists, it's just that we haven't realized our art. Just as there is an art to engineering, there's an art to science, there's an art to everything, but we've got to put that art. And what is art? Art is your heart. Your heart is being put into it. Life is being breathed into what you do. There is beauty in everything that you do. And it then is interlinked to something that will give more life and more positivity to your fellow man or woman. So it's really important, to realize your potential and see the magic as well when you're in the world and you're going out into the world. It's so easy to get sucked into the physicality of what that reality is in the collective, to not actually see it and observe it for what it is in your dreamlike state, and never lose that dreamlike state, because that's the most important thing. That's something the shaman teaches is remain in the dream state. There's something magical about that, because you can manipulate reality in a different way that most people can't. What I mean, like, not manipulate, but as in like change the circumstances so that you have a very unique how do I say, you're scripting reality in a very unique way. You'll meet certain people, synchronicities will happen, in the world when you go out there, rather than, if you're going to the same supermarket, the same thing, like Jason talks about, break pattern. Again, break it, do something different, shake it up a bit. If life is getting boring, well, you're the one that's boring. So stop being boring then.
Yeah.
you know?
Game, isn't it? It's how we think about things, what we do. Yeah. Makes perfect sense. Perfect sense.
Mm.
Wow. I mean, what a conversation. I expect this, it's gone off track a little bit, but it all falls under the same thing with the fool and the sage and stuff. It's just been an amazing conversation, and I feel personally every time that we do these, share and stuff. For me, I always get something out of it every time as well. So it's not just for the viewers. I'm saying that as well. Ahmed, that it helps me too. So thank you.
Yeah, it's a
Uh,
pleasure.
you
I'm not
know,
saying anything
thank
new.
you, thank you, thank you.
Again,
No, but
I owe my knowledge to others. There's
mm,
nothing like, again, it's just putting the time and the discipline to learn these things,
mm,
and when you do, you enrich your
yeah,
life and
yeah,
you empower yourself more, and I'm here
mm,
to just pay it forward. That's all I'm doing. I'm just paying it forward. So,
yeah, yeah.
if I can if one individual can take something great, something, that I've done my job. I'm happy. For me,
Mm,
it's about empowering the conscious ones amongst us,
mm, mm,
to so that we're not going into our traumas and
mm,
our negative
mm,
feedback loop, so we can live a better, more fulfilling life and truly be alive while we are alive. And when we go out into the world, into the matrix, so to speak, you know you're speaking where people will start to pay attention, because you'll have the knowledge and they'll be looking at you going, wow, I've never heard that conversation before, never looked at life this way before, because you're speaking the truth. And that's the point. You speak it out in the physical, and hopefully through that the right people will maybe there's a few more that need to wake up, and probably there is, so it's important that we're there and we're paying it forward. So yeah, anyway, always a pleasure, Kelvin. I really enjoy our conversations.
Yeah, thank you for for this wonderful discussion tonight, and yeah, I always come away from it, and funny enough, every time we do this, I go back and go through it and watch it again, and I always get something out of it for myself as well. So I just want our listeners to know that as well, and I just hope that they take away something from this discussion tonight as well. And yeah, thank you, and we're looking forward to having you back again next month.
Likewise.
So thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Much love.